We are officially back from the first official DLC Disney Lorcana challenges in Atlanta this past weekend. Also took place in Lille. Two separate winners. We had Frank Keston winning with Amber Steel Songs, which was a nice little tip of the hats and seeing as one of the first events within the Disney Lorcana metagame and for the Into the Inklands. Amber Steel was successful, so it also ends successful overseas. Here we had a pretty interesting win from a Amber Amethyst Mufasa deck. Also quite exciting. I want to very quickly kind of just go through and give some of the shout outs from this weekend. We are kind of now moving forward with, Ursula's return and the metagame for Into the Inklands is kind of dead. Maybe there are some things that we can learn from it kind of moving forward. If not, most importantly, just understanding, hey, maybe we overlook some cards. A card like Fairy Godmother coming in and being an honest force to be reckoned with. So much so that at the end of the event, when Joshua had finished winning, the card he had Ryan Miller sign was Fairy Godmother. And no, not the Floodborn, the 3 cost. So all I'm saying is every once in a while, it's okay to kind of open your binder back up, go back on Dreamborn, go back on Ink Decks, and kind of just scale through and look for some of these cards that might be honestly overlooked. Let's get into some of the fun stuff. First and foremost, a huge shout out to Josh Paltry. The deck that he had played was truly innovative. I actually tweeted out innovation at the final stages of a metagame is something you have to respect. Congratulations, sir. There'll be an interview with him on One on Lorcana. I'm not positive that's out yet. If it is, I'll definitely link it in the description. But if not, you might want to go check them out because they're going to have kind of the 411 on how Joshua got into his list. And, in all honesty, you can see this picture and like from where I was sitting there watching Josh go up, accept the Mickey, accept the binder full of stuff. Like he was pure excitement all the way through. From the first time we got in, we're representing top 8. Just all the way, I love seeing that from players. You can really see the joy and excitement from winning a tournament, and it's not to mention a 2,000 person event. That's just no easy feat. The run was great. I'm sure he played exceptional. You cannot get there without also playing good. I'm also sure maybe he got a little lucky along the way because, hey, sometimes you do need that luck to accomplish goals like this. But all in all, the work put in, the deck that was successful, huge shout outs to Josh. I definitely look forward to hopefully talking to you about that run in the future. If you haven't heard from me yet, you will soon. Thank you guys so much. Now let's get into the next one. Matthew Wright picked up a second place finish. He was playing Ruby Amethyst, so we had a Ruby Amethyst and a Amber Amethyst in the finals. Honestly, incredibly well played by Matthew, picking up a second place finish in this event is definitely no slouch. I imagine the Amber Amethyst was not the match he was expecting within the finals, but that's what we got. Really exciting way to kind of end the Into the Inklands metagame. Ruby Amethyst, Amber Steel, Sapphire Steel, Emerald Steel, Amber Amethyst, Amber Ruby. There were 9 different decks within the top 64 of this event in Atlanta this past weekend, which is really showcasing exactly what we said kind of all along, that in this particular metagame, there were so many options to be successful. In a 2,000 player tournament, finishing in top 64 with 9 different ink combinations, and even within those ink combinations, the differences between decks. Amethyst Steel was a list that we played, and it was very good. It was very powerful. We ended up with 3 players playing this particular Amethyst Steel deck in top 100, 94th, 95th, and 42nd. But there was also other Amethyst Steel versions in Top Cut, so really cool just to look at an ink combination like that has had growing success, but very quiet success, I would say, over the last few months. Even during set champs, there was only 2 or 3 Amethyst Steel decks that won, championship playmats. So when you start thinking about those things, again, it's really about overlooking. We talk so much about what's popular, but not necessarily what is successful at a 1-to-1 ratio. And Amethyst Steel was definitely a version of that. Amber Amethyst was another one of those where it was consistently, every now and then showing up in top 8s, top 16s of these bigger events. Well, this one we did well more than that. It came in and it crushed it. But all in all, it was a really nice end to the metagame, showcasing some decks that were really not at the forefront of it whatsoever, specifically the winning deck, of course. So it is just nice to say that, listen, even through 14 weeks, we can still make innovation. So again, huge shout out to Josh picking up that incredible victory in the first North American DLC in Atlanta. And this, before we know it, guys, we got one next Saturday. Let's start talking about that. So driving home on Monday, I actually put out a tweet and I said, if you crushed a constructed side event this weekend in challenges with set 4 cards, post your deck here. Meta Report needs the deets. There was a couple responses here. The first is our friend Franz over at Traverse Tavern. So he went 6-1 with a Ruby Amethyst Flynn Rider build. We also have Lumiere, the new Goofy Super Goof, some brawls, the Sisu 3 cost, but not the Floodborn Sisu. We also have a B King Undisputed, so lots of new cards in this deck. He also went with the Archimedes line, which I really enjoyed as well because it was a card that I played in Richmond. Dick Burns is definitely a huge fan of the Archimedes. So it was nice to see this type of evolution of this deck, understanding that understanding that Ruby Amethyst very likely needs 4 brawls, similar to how most steel decks have 4 steel smashes. This card might just be necessary evil in the metagame to be able to get rid of cards like Diablo, which we're going to see a bunch of very, very soon. So it's very nice to see this type of innovation. It looks like Franz again went 6-1 and constructed, picking up a couple promos, which is nice. He said he was able to defeat 2 Ruby Sapphires and an Emerald Steel in his matches. Again, now we are talking about just small incremental sizes here. Listen, I'm not saying that this is the best list in the game or anything like that. I was really just looking for some help, kind of some different coverages from the events to showcase what players were playing that weekend. And this particular list does have a fair amount of new cards in it. Flynn Rider has been a card that I've been really kind of high on since release, saying that it's one of my favorite cards in the set. I will say that if cards like Diablo are powerful and things like that, then obviously all the things that answer Diablo also answer Flynn Rider. But Flynn Rider can put yourself in really nice positions later on in the game with on turn 5 being able to play a 3 and a 2, kind of hedging your bets on the lore gain out of strength situations like that. So while your opponents are mostly preparing for certain cards early on in the game, Flynn Rider has the ability to come down late in the game and kind of be a secondary problematic, thing for your opponent. But it also can just come in on play 2, on turn 2 or turn 3. And with cards like Lumiere and cards like Snake and Fox, Maui and Medusa, like those are high strength cards that when they come in, they remove something from the play, and then Flynn Rider gets a stick, kind of gain a little bit more lore from them. A nice way to steadily control the board and also still gain lore along the way. Could be something to look out for Ruby Amethyst enjoyers that want to transition into Ursula's Return metagame with some new tricks and tips. Of course, where we would be without Emerald Steel. This list picked up 2 Rapunzels played by Sad Robot Alters. You can see here it's pretty straightforward. I do love the 4 we don't talk about Brunos in this list. 4 Strength of Raging Fire, 2 And Then Along Came Zeus, 4 Let the Storm Rage On, and 2 Sudden Chills. We are still very much an Ursula Deceiver of all deck, but we now have the complements of new 3-cost Floodborn Diablo Devoted Herald, of course, with also Diablo Maleficent Spy. This list is playing a 1 of Morph, which is not something you continuously see. We also have Aladdin Blade Rescuer, and of course, the one and only annoying 2-cost Buggy the Squirrel Squeak Tutor, which is probably all the rage. I have to say that Bucky might be one of the more annoying cards in the game for sure. Having a 1/1 with ward on 2 that for the rest of the game, whenever you play a Floodborn character, you're punishing your opponent pretty heavily by making them discard a card. And now we have not 1, but 2 3-cost Floodborn characters. So even if you can't shift early, you can still just go on turn 3 and, forevermore, play a Floodborn character and start the race immediately for pressuring your opponent's hand. The other really unique thing here is the ability to have Diablo Maleficent Spy and Ursula Deceiver. So when they both come into play, they get to look at your opponent's hand. You can kind of scout the area, see what's clear, remove a song that can even interact with your Diablo and things like that. So there's a lot of punishing lines here from Emerald moving forward so far in the early ons. And we're going to see a little bit more of this soon. But I really just wanted to cover some of the people that were kind enough to share their tournament reports from the DLC side event. So let's check another one out. Logan Taylor went 2-1 in two separate constructed events, losing to Set 4, Emerald Steel, and Emerald Amethyst. The list is nowhere near optimized, but I got some good games and data across both events for the changes and cuts. You can kind of see here we are repping the Ruby Sapphire ramp package, still playing one jumps and how far it goes, along with the Fishbone Quills, of course, picking up some new and interesting cards in the form of Sisu. We actually don't have the, sorry, both the 3-cost uninkable 1/1 that comes into play and banishes opposing 1 strength or lower characters, along with our Floodborn 5/4 shift character with 3 lore. And of course, when she comes into play, she gets to banish all opposing characters with 2 strength or less, kind of falling in line with one another really well. Combining with Ice Block can really create incredible play lines for yourself. Madame Medusa also gets a huge uptick here, utilizing Ice Block to take out even more characters. I cannot tell you how many times this weekend I had heard my opponent saying, oh man, my Ruby Sapphire opponent had 2 Ice Blocks in play, made my 5 strength character a 3 strength character, and then Medusa'd it. That's brutal. It's pretty insane. Of course, we also now have Scuttle. Scuttle can come in, find your Ice Blocks, find your Popsicles, your Ducky Dimes, and your Fishbone Quills. But we're still mostly ending games here with the giant Tamatoa Crab Maleficence, and even Belle, of course. The final new addition, once again, for Ruby cards, for Ruby players, is Brawl. I think Brawl is going to be one of the better players in the game. Being able, I feel that Brawl will honestly be one of the biggest removals early on in set 4 for sure. It might be a necessary evil to keep in your deck moving forward, but right now, with the amount of 2 strength characters seeing play early and really are true impacts on the game, I think you need to be packing 4 Brawls in your Ruby decks without a doubt. Another one here is played by Ezekiel. He went 3-0 in games of the 3v3 tournament, beating Ruby Sapphire Control twice, and the second deck he linked below. But, if we're looking at this one, we have an Amber Ruby Mufasa deck. I really do love this. We are also featuring the Flynn Rider here. We have the new Beast, which of course is perfect for our Rapunzels and Julietas, which is great. So there's lots of new synergy for the Ruby Amber Mufasa decks. Having Stitch Carefree Surfers, having the Sisus, playing Chernobyls, repping Teeth and Ambitions even better now because we, once again, have Julieta and have Rapunzel. We have different lines there. Picking up Super Goofs and the Sisu 3. This card is another card that has a lot of potential to really punish opponents and specific play lines within Disney Lorcana. We also have Lumiere here. Again, this is kind of the pseudo answer to Ice Block, keeping characters out of reach of Sisu and Medusa, maybe even Brawl in some occasions, of course, Under the Sea as well. So, you can see a lot of interesting new things. I think, if I'm being honest, Amber Ruby probably got the most tools to take itself from a tier 2 deck to a tier 1 deck, but it still seems like it's having some struggles within the overall Disney Lorcana metagame. So we'll have to see how that unfolds moving forward. So you can see there that just a couple of the live paper events showcasing what players brought to these. I do think there's, a lot of exploration that still has to be done. But what I'll say for sure is there was a very alarming tournament that came out this past weekend, and I would be crazy not to present that data to you guys. So let's take a look at this. Just honestly insane look at this top 8 decks of a 41-player event hosted on Monday night. So yeah, guys, the top 8 here is Emerald Steel, Steel Emerald, Steel Emerald, Steel Emerald, C4GS, which is, yep, you guessed it right, Emerald Steel, Steel Emerald, Steel Emerald, and Emerald Steel. The other insanely alarming thing here is that the cheapest deck that I just told you is $592.52, and the most expensive deck is $753.02. So, yeah, that's a problem. So let's take a look at this a little bit here, guys. All right, so let's take a look at this a little bit here. I think what I love and the reason why this list was the particular first place list played by Jordan Bashi here is because he has Grab Your Swords. This deck has not one, but two shiftable 5-drop characters in Robin Hood and Pegasus. Your opponents in the mirror matches are living life, with small Robin Hood, small Pegasus, the Buckies, of course. Some lists are still playing Prince Johns. We have the bigger Diablos. So we have all these cards with 2 willpower or less. The ability to come in, shift in with Pegasus or Robin Hood and play a Grab Your Swords could be game ending. Honestly, like I truthfully, I played a game this past weekend where I was playing against Amber Steel. I was playing Amethyst Steel. My opponent in the first 3 turns, I was going first. I went 1 drop, 1 drop, 1 drop. My opponent also went 1 drop, 1 drop, 1 drop. And my turn 3 play was shift in Robin, exert, grab your swords, you're aboard, and the game was instantly over. So if everyone's focused around dumping their hands early, getting cards like Bucky's and Diablos into play, one of the best answers to that might be shift lines for 4-cost character or for 5-cost characters that can play Grab Your Swords. And yes, I know you have Ursula and Diablo here that get to look at your hand so your opponent doesn't play into those things. But in all honesty, if your opponent isn't playing into those things, their deck's not operating how it should be. So it's kind of a give and take there. And sometimes, yeah, maybe I got to draw a Grab Your Swords off the top to punish my opponent as well. And I got to put myself in the position to best be able to do that. I think that that's going to be a line that we're just going to have to kind of live on early on in the metagame. If we can't find additional ways to deal with Bucky and Diablo, and Prince John, it's just, there's so many of them. It's crazy. But, let's take a look at a couple other versions of this particular Emerald Steel list that was successful that day. So you can see in this version, we added a few Zeus. We're 4 Ursula, 4 Diablo, 4 Beast, 4 Robin Hood. The legendary Emerald Steel package is definitely not a cheap one. What I would love to say also, and I didn't mention it last, is the addition of Aladdin and Diablo, each being 3-cost Bloodborne characters that interact with Bucky, is probably one of the low-key most frustrating things. Yes, it's very frustrating to be able to play the perfect line of play my Diablo on 1, play Bucky on 2, shift Diablo by discarding one of my extra songs, and then singing Let the Storm Rage on. You can basically have a full turn of making your opponent discard a card, then you drawing a card and removing a character with Let the Storm Rage on, passing to your opponent and drawing an additional card legitimately right away. So while you're sitting there with multiple characters in play, gaining lore, having board presence, drawing extra cards, your opponent has nothing and they're down a card. I feel like this could be one of the most problematic play lines in a world where we have Pegasus 1, Robin Hood 1, Shift 3 with Pegasus and Robin Hood. And then when you miss on those, we still have Floodborns in the form of Aladdin and Diablo. So Bucky on 2 is so much better now. It's insane. And a world where you can actually Bucky on 2 and shift Diablo on 2. And then on top of that, have a 3-cost Floodborn in the form of Aladdin to follow up. Just really pressuring your opponent's hands so very early and continuing with board presence. And not to mention that each of these Floodborn characters have additional abilities. Aladdin is also, when he quest, remove an item. Diablo, while exerted, draws you cards. So these 3-cost powerhouses, with the addition of shifting Pegasus or Robin Hood, is just so many abilities and versatility out of your 3-cost slot. And I think that that's why Emerald Steel is really pulling out ahead of so many different decks. Honestly, today, when I'm done recording this, I have Dick Burns and Rob Serpay coming to my house, and I'm going to be playtesting the entire day. Early on, Emerald Steel is the threat. Ruby Sapphire also kind of a high threat level there, but right now it's showing very, very clearly that Emerald Steel has all the tools and annoyance and non-interactive play lines that players are going to have to adapt or really get used to playing off the top of their deck. So we're going to have to see how this goes, but it's very, very worrisome early on when you look at the reports and you see, something like this where we have 8 of the same deck in top 8 in a 41 player tournament. That's definitely not how you really want to start any metagame, I would say. So because that's what we have, it is a bit confusing. It is a bit alarming, but it is where we're at, which means we can prepare for it. You just got to have right now in your sight lines enemy 1 for this weekend playing in the pack event that's going on. You just got to know right now Emerald Steel is a real thing. But if you can't participate in the pack, I would keep an eye on the pack. Definitely something we're going to cover on the channel because it's going to be a fairly large event that's going to be showcasing set 4 through the most of the better players in the game. A lot of players like myself. Here I am recording this Wednesday morning. I have not played a single game of Constructed with Set 4 yet because I was focused on Atlanta. That's going to be the same for a lot of really good players that were successful in Atlanta. A lot of your players that were in the top 128 picking up Let It Goes were all very focused on that format. So now it's time for us to pivot and say, okay, let's pick up our Ursula return cards and play some new meta. But now we all know that Diablo is numero uno, target number 1. I hope you guys are kind of not overreacting just yet. We need to see what's going on. We need to give the opportunity for players to kind of focus in on this format and see if we can make a change or cause a shift in the metagame before this weekend, or even, of course, before next weekend where the DLC in Chicago. So all in all, this week's meta report. Thank you guys for sharing your deck list on Twitter. Inkdex, as always, for finding this amount of data information. For anyone that was looking and curious, of course, some of the other decks that were successful was a Ruby Amethyst, a Blue Steel, an Amber Amethyst, or Amber Emerald Sing Together deck. So there were some other things here, but the alarming thing at the end of the day is, of course, that top 8 finish. Thank you guys so much for watching today. If you saw me in Chicago, or if you saw me in Atlanta and you loved it, you enjoyed it, thank you so much. It really meant the world to me for all the compliments, the hugs, the fist bumps, the signature. Signing Forbidden Mountains was one of my favorite. But so much more. I signed deck boxes, score pads, badges, whatever it was. If it made you happy and you enjoyed it and you were excited about it, I just want you to know that I was too. Thank you guys so very much. If you're going to Chicago, you weren't in Atlanta, do not be afraid to walk up, hit me up with a fist bump. If you want anything from me, just let me know. It was just such a relief, and just so much going into that weekend was so different from every other event that I attended. You guys really showed me a ton of love, and I thank you so much for that. I do these weekly, so if it's your first time here, we're going to do these more in depth. There hasn't been a lot of concrete information about set 4 yet, which is why we haven't gotten to the graph and the analytics. But this week, if we had the analytics and the graph, it would have been a million Emerald Steals and nothing else. So this weekend, first kind of big tournament for players to play in. We'll definitely be covering that in full, probably as early as Sunday. So thank you guys so much for watching today, and we will catch you in the next one.